I heard the chandelier before I heard her voice, this soft trembling ring above the table right as my mother leaned in and said, "We're only inviting you out of pity, so don't stay long." Forks paused. My sister smirked. My brother kept swirling his scotch like the words were meant for someone else. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but my hand stayed steady as I lifted my glass. I smiled, took one small sip, and stood. No one stopped me. No one even looked up. But 2 weeks later, every single one of them would. Before I continue, I just need to know there's someone out there who's heard words like these before. If you have, then follow me into the rest, because it didn't end the way they expected. Hello, I'm Lotus in the story above. When I was a kid, the cabin at Lake Marlowe was the only place where I felt solid, not see-through. My grandfather would take me out to the dock before sunrise, the lake a sheet of silver waiting for the day to begin. He'd place a fishing rod in my hands, steady and warm, while the air smelled like wet pine. At night we sat by the fire, my fingers sticky with burnt marshmallows, the cedar chest beside us, holding the deed he always called ours. One day he told me this will be yours to protect. I held on to those words like a promise, but after he died, the cabin became something else entirely. My parents quietly folded it into what they called the family place, even though the title stayed under my name. Summer trips were planned in group chats that never included me until everything was finalized. Photos from those weekends began appearing in frames around the house, my brother on the dock, pretending he caught the biggest fish, my sister wrapped in a blanket on the porch, my parents smiling like they'd built the whole thing themselves. I wasn't in a single picture. I learned early that attention in my family wasn't shared, it was assigned. My brother was the shining example. My sister was the one everyone adored, and I was the utility player, the extra pair of hands. When I made honor roll, no one came to the ceremony. When I worked 2 jobs to cover community college, my mother used me as a cautionary tale. Make better choices than Lotus. It was never loud, never cruel, just a slow, steady drafting of my role. The night they forgot to set a place for me at dinner. The birthday, when only my grandfather remembered. The day a teacher called to say I'd won a scholarship and my parents replied, "We didn't know she applied." There was one summer when I tried to speak up. They were planning yet another weekend at the cabin and I said quietly, "I'd like to come too." My mother didn't even look up from her notes. "All the rooms are taken," she said. "Maybe next year." My brother snorted. My sister kept scrolling. I stood there holding a bag of groceries, snacks they'd asked me to pick up, the lanterns someone said we needed. No one noticed when I set the bag down and walked out. Looking back, I think that was the day I understood the silence they expected from me, and I learned how to survive inside it. 2 nights after the party, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter while I was rinsing a mug. The screen flashed with the family group chat photos, plans, long threads of messages I hadn't opened in months. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked at the preview. They were planning the annual summer trip to the cabin. My brother sent a picture of a new outdoor grill he wanted to bring. My sister suggested matching family shirts for the porch photos. My mother typed paragraphs about guest rooms, groceries, and seating arrangements. My name wasn't mentioned once, not as a guest. Not even as a footnote. It was like watching a play where I had been written out of the cast, but somehow left in the credits for legal reasons. I tapped the screen, scrolling quietly. All the bedrooms are taken. Lotus doesn't really come anyway. We'll use her key if she forgets to drop it off. Her key. As if she owned the place. As if I didn't. A small envelope icon appeared at the top of the screen. Another bank email, the kind I usually ignored. I opened it on instinct. It was a reminder about a joint account I didn't remember agreeing to. My name appeared right beside my mother's, highlighted in bold. At the bottom, there was a note about property tax auto payments linked to my profile. Payments for the cabin. Payments I didn't authorize. I stared at the screen, the kitchen suddenly too quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. My breath felt heavy in my chest, like the air had thickened. I wasn't just overlooked. I wasn't just the extra guest. I was a name they used when paperwork required someone responsible. I set the phone down on the table, face down. The vibration of new messages buzzed against the wood, rattling slightly like something trying to crawl back into my attention. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I sat in the chair by the window, pulled my knees in, and watched the city lights flicker against the glass. Towels hung unevenly on the counter. A stack of mail leaned against the fruit bowl. Everything looked still, paused waiting. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, I felt something settle. Not anger, not even hurt, just clarity. I smiled small, quiet, almost invisible. The kind of smile no one in that group chat would ever notice. But they would, soon. The morning after the group chat, I woke before my alarm. The apartment was dim, washed in that gray light that makes everything look softer, quieter. I tied my hair back with the elastic I kept on my wrist, padded barefoot into the kitchen, and started the coffee maker. Its slow drip filled the silence like a metronome. I sat at the small wooden table, the surface marked with old coffee rings and scratches from years of work. I opened my notebook, the same one I use for freelance clients, and turned to a fresh page. The pen felt heavier than usual, but the words came easily. Sell the cabin, close joint accounts, call lawyer about the estate. 3 lines, neat, simple, steady, a plan built from silence. I took a sip of coffee, then pulled the metal filing cabinet open. It groaned like it always did, the sound scraping through the room. Inside were years of documents, old bank statements, tax letters, utility bills, things most people would have thrown away. I kept everything. It wasn't sentiment, it was survival. Near the back, wrapped in an old envelope, I found the deed to the cabin. The paper was slightly yellowed, still smelling faintly of cedar from my grandfather's chest. I placed it carefully on the table, smoothing the edges with my palm. At 7:14 a.m., I called Dan. He answered with a tired voice clearing his throat. "Lotus, everything okay?" "I need to sell the cabin," I said. No hesitation. Quietly, efficiently. There was a pause long enough that I could imagine him sitting straighter, waking up fully. "The one by Lake Marlowe, your grandparents." "Yes, I thought your parents used it." "They do," I said. "But they don't own it." Another pause. A shift. The kind where someone realizes the ground beneath them is not what they assumed. "All right," he said slowly. "Send me everything you have. I'll draft the paperwork." We hung up. I scanned the deed page by page, the soft hum of the scanner filling the kitchen. I sent the files to Dan with a short message, then moved to the next item on my list. Joint accounts. I logged into the bank portal, the blue-white light of the laptop screen lighting my face. My name appeared in places I didn't expect. Co-signer on an old checking account, secondary, on a credit line attached to auto payments for the cabin's property taxes. I clicked through each one, reading the fine print, the dates, the signatures. Some went back years. Close account, remove name, disable auto pay. Each action made a soft clicking sound like distant dominoes. I took notes as I went, marking confirmations with small check marks in the notebook. At one point, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Mom's planning the trip. "Are you coming or not?" I let the message fade from the screen without opening it. By noon, I had closed 4 accounts, removed myself from 3 others, and canceled every automatic payment tied to my name. The silence in the apartment felt different now. Not empty, but intentional. Controlled. Next, I drafted an email to Harris, my parents' estate lawyer. I kept it brief, formal. "Hello, I'd like to review all documents related to the family estate and ensure my rights are properly represented. Please advise on available dates. Regards, Lotus." I read it twice, then hit send. Another buzz from my phone. This time, a voicemail alert. Probably my mother, though she hadn't called me directly in weeks. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. Instead, I cleaned the table, stacking the papers into a single, organized pile. I slid them into a folder and placed it on the counter. The apartment felt sharper, like the edges of things had come into focus. The plan wasn't emotional. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was procedural. Exact, unmistakably mine. Around 3, Dan texted, "Got the deed, everything checks out, starting the listing quietly. We'll send updates as offers come in." I replied with a simple, "Thank you." As the afternoon faded into early evening, I sat by the window with a fresh cup of coffee. The city moved below me, cars' voices, wind pushing against the glass. I watched it all with a stillness I hadn't felt in years. They had spent so long treating me like a name they could use a space, they could fill a signature, they could borrow. I had played along, I had stayed quiet. But this time, the silence belonged to me. I closed my notebook, set my pen on top of it, and took one slow, steady breath. This time, I wouldn't fix what they'd broken. 2 weeks passed before anything happened, long enough for the silence to settle into my apartment like a second layer of paint. I worked, cooked simple meals, answered emails, and watched the city move outside my window. Nothing dramatic, just time passing the way it always does quietly until something breaks. The first crack came early one morning. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a message from Dan. Offer came in, cash buyer, closing soon. Funds will transfer directly to your account. I read the words twice, not out of disbelief, but because they felt strangely distant, like reading about someone else's life. I texted back one word approved and set the phone aside. By noon, the cabin was gone. I didn't tell anyone, but they found out anyway. That evening, my sister sent a string of messages to the family group chat. They came in fast, like she was typing while pacing. Did someone change the lock code at the cabin? Mom's freaking out. Dad says the realtor sign wasn't there last week. Lotus. What did you do? I didn't open the thread. I just watched the previews stack on my lock screen, each one more frantic than the last. An hour later, my mother called. 3 times. Then she switched to voicemail. Lotus, this is not funny. Call me back immediately. Then another, you had no right. This isn't just your decision. Call me now. And another voice cracking, Lotus, please. You're scaring me. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the voicemail counter climb like a timer. For the first time, their panic wasn't something they could hide behind polite words or controlled tones. It was raw, uneven, honest. Then came the bank statements. My mother texted a photo, blurry, tilted, but I could still make out the red notifications. Joint account closed, credit line suspended, property tax auto pay failed, secondary signature removed. She didn't send a message with the photo. She didn't need to. The image said everything. Within minutes, my brother called. Then again, then again. I let each ring fade into the room like a distant alarm. Finally, he sent a single message. What the hell is going on? I put the phone face down, the vibration rattling lightly against the wood. The apartment felt smaller, tighter, like the air had thickened. The city outside seemed muted, as if waiting to see what I'd do next. Then came the moment I'd been expecting. A soft thud outside my door. A pause. Then the buzzer. I pressed the intercom. It's Dad. Open up. His voice carried none of the command I grew up with. It sounded strained, something between anger and uncertainty. I buzzed him in and stepped back, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. The door opened hard, hitting the stop with a sharp click. My father stood there, breath-heavy, face flushed. He looked around the apartment, slowly taking in the mismatched furniture, the tiny kitchen, the papers stacked neatly on the table. Is it true? He asked. Did you sell the cabin? I kept my voice even. Yes. You closed the accounts, removed your name from everything. Yes. His jaw tightened. Do you understand what you've done? I nodded once. Completely. He exhaled long and shaky, like someone realizing a door had been shut from the other side. All right, he said quietly. You've made your point. I straightened. No, I haven't. Not yet. He looked at me, then really looked. And in that moment, the balance shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, undeniable tilt. A small envelope sat on the counter beside me. Dan's letter. I slid it toward him. A lawyer's letter is on its way, I said. You should read it. His expression didn't break, but something in his posture folded like a structure losing a support beam. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just turned, opened the door, and walked out. And for the first time in years, the silence he left behind felt like mine. The morning after my father left the apartment felt unusually bright. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains in quiet slanted lines, landing on the table where the last of the paperwork still sat in a neat stack. The room was still except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip of the coffee maker finishing its cycle. I moved slowly, almost carefully, as if the air had a new weight to it. I poured coffee into my chipped mug, wrapped both hands around it, and stood by the window. The city moved below, cars merging, people crossing streets, a dog tugging its owner toward the park. Ordinary things, steady things, things that didn't need my permission or my presence. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message preview appeared. Mom wants to apologize. Can we talk another? We didn't know things were this bad. Please answer. I didn't touch the phone. I let the screen dim on its own, the apartment returning to its soft quiet. I sat at the table, tracing the rim of my mug with one finger. The folder of documents was closed now, the deed to the cabin no longer mine, the accounts detached from my name, the legal letter already moving through the system. These things weren't symbols anymore. They were decisions, finished ones. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel suspended between obligation and resentment. I felt grounded, like someone standing on their own porch after a storm, hearing the world breathe again. A flicker of memory came back, the cabin at dusk, the lake turning copper as the sun dropped behind the trees. My grandfather's voice, low and steady, telling me to protect what was mine. I'd tried to honor that for years. In the end, protecting it didn't mean holding on to it. It meant releasing the place where I'd once belonged, but no longer did. I closed my eyes for a moment and inhaled slowly. The air smelled like coffee, old wood, and morning light warming the floor. When I opened my eyes again, everything felt clear, not lighter, not heavier, just honest. The silence in the room wasn't the kind they forced on me. It was the kind I chose. I didn't cut them off. I just stopped signing my name under their chaos. Some endings don't slam shut, they settle. Like dust after a long breath, like a door easing closed on its own. And if you've ever reclaimed your quiet even once, you know the sound it makes. It isn't loud, it isn't angry, it's the soft click of a life finally belonging to you. If you've lived through something like this, let your voice be heard. Share what stayed silent the longest. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs to choose themselves.